Hi, everyone. We're live today with Alexandra Pickett, and she's here to talk to us today about social presence for the Human MOOC course. And I just wanted to give a quick little background on Alex. She leads the Open SUNY Center for Online Teaching Excellence and is a former associate director of the SUNY Learning Network, the Asynchronous Learning Network for the State University of New York. And leading Open SUNY Coach, she and her team are working to take SUNY online faculty development to scale, working with input from various campus work teams and groups to support the mission of access, success, and completion. And Alex has been in the field of online learning for a while, and we're just thrilled to have her share her wealth of knowledge on this topic. So to begin with, I thought maybe you could just give a little background on a quick summary for people that maybe aren't that familiar on community of inquiry and how social presence fits within that model.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So the community of inquiry is a theoretical framework, and it represents a process for creating a deeper, more meaningful learning experience. And it focuses on three independent elements, and that's social, cognitive, and teaching presence, which I'm sure you all, being part of Human MOOC, have been exploring and are familiar with. And this is based on the work of Garrison, Anderson, and Archer. Originally, I believe, is the original paper. I think it was published in 2000, The Critical Inquiry in a Text-Based Environment, and it was really came out of computer conferencing in higher education. So it's, as I said, it's comprised of teaching presence, and teaching presence is the design, facilitation, and direction of cognitive and social processes for the purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educationally worthwhile learning outcomes. And cognitive presence is the extent to which learners are able to construct and confirm meaning through sustained reflection and discourse. And finally, social presence is the ability of participants to identify with the community, the course of study that they're in, to communicate purposefully in a trusting environment and develop interpersonal relationships by way of projecting their individual personalities. And all of this can be found in lots more detail on the COI website, and we'll post a link to that, or I'll see if I can do that in the chat here. So you can find more information about that. The website.
Yep, I'll post it on Twitter.
Okay, great. So, so that's kind of an overview of the community of inquiry model. So what's next?
Can you share some personal examples or examples from faculty that you worked with where they've incorporated activities in their into their online courses as a way to build that trust and build that community?
Yeah, I want to go through actually all of the. There's three categories of indicators under social presence, and if you drill deeper into each of the presences, you'll see that the way that it's articulated in the paper is that way. There's the overarching presence, and then there are categories of indicators under each. So for social presence, that's comprised of what the authors refer to as affective expression, and then there's three of them. The second is interaction, and the third is group cohesion. And so let me start with affective expression, and I think the reason that we're interested in an online teaching and learning environment in cultivating affective expression is to support and facilitate social interaction in that online teaching environment. And you want to do that so that students can get to know each other, so that the faculty and the students can get to know each other. so that students can feel a sense of belonging in the course, and so that you can really get a sense or establish a true sense of class community, given the fact that everybody's online. And so students will establish trust, or you want to cultivate ways for students to establish trust with you as the professor, and with their classmates. And that allows you that initial social connection, social interaction, and trust building, that sense of building the class community, allows you to be able to move on to the teaching presence in the course and to the cognitive presences. Without that initial step, you know, I would say it's almost impossible to move beyond that first step into teaching presence and social presence. Sorry, cognitive presence. And so the other thing that you want to achieve with affective expression is to allow the members of that learning community to form distinct impressions of each other, and those in those others in the course. They need to feel that those that they are interacting with are real people, and especially the instructor of the course. So, you know, so what are some examples, or how would you create this in an online teaching and learning environment? There's lots of different ways to do that, and so I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list. I can tell you from my own experiences teaching online, and from my observation of lots and lots of online faculty, that, you know, that there's lots of ways to do this. So one way is to use emotions and humor and self-disclosure appropriately, of course, based on who you are. And what I mean by this is, like, I don't mean being chummy with your students. What I mean is modeling yourself in your welcome, in your introductions, in your interactions, in your discussions, and to use those ways that you interact as a mechanism to convey your voice, to convey your personality, your sense of self, to help your students form that distinct impression of you, and to model that for them. So you are then encouraging them to do the same. You're giving them, by example, you know, sort of some ways that they could do it themselves. Again, it's all based on who you are and what I'm not saying represent yourself as other than you are. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. Be your authentic self, and use the mechanisms online to help to convey that to the students as much as possible. So things like leveraging course profiles, photos or avatars, interests that are both professional, academic, and personal help with that. You also can create spaces for social interaction within your course. So, for example, in my course, I have a community area, a class community area, and I allow a space there for students to interact with each other, and I have a place there for them to give me some feedback. I play a little game, like I've hidden something in my course, and I ask them to find it, so I have a number of sort of activities that are not directly related to the course that I make space for in my course there. I also have things like a bulletin board, or like a virtual coffee house, and those kinds of things. And then obviously you want to start your course off with some sort of, you know, ice-breaking type activities, or introductory type activities, and there's as many ways to do that as there are faculty, and you may want to have combinations of ways to give students a chance to get to know each other, and to get some additional depth. So it's more than just, you know, introduce yourselves, or because that becomes kind of rote, and if students are taking lots of online courses, you know, it becomes like, this is who I am, and this is what I'm studying, and this is who I hope I will be when I grow up, or whatever, you know, it becomes, and what you want to do is kind of frame that introductory discussion with some context, to make sure that it's more personalized, or not, doesn't become rote if students are taking multiple courses. So you might want to ask about prior knowledge about the course, for example, expectations that they might have about this course, experiences that they may have had that made them interested in taking the course, stuff like that, to give a little bit more depth to their introductory comments in the course. And obviously you do want to know, who they are, and some little personal stuff about them. But and that, like I said, there's lots of different ways to do that. One of the ways that I do it is that I use a voice thread, and in that voice thread, I interview my daughter. It's a video of me interviewing my daughter, so it's a shot of my daughter when she was about 9 years old. So she's about 15 now, so it was a little while ago that I did this. But I interviewed her about me, and I asked her questions about me that were things like what my favorite color is, and what do I like to eat, and what do I do for a living, and it was like a series of 20 questions. You may have seen it because it's like a meme in Facebook or on the internet where you ask your kid a series of questions. And I just did it. And then I took that video and I used it as a way to introduce myself to my students. And I put it into a voice thread. And I did it because I wanted my students to see and understand me from her eyes, from her perspective, so that they would know that I'm not just the professor of the course, I'm also a human being, and I have a daughter, and I have a dog, and I have a messy house, and I have, usually really messy hair, and my husband is, walking around in the background of the tape, of the video, and I want them to see that I'm multidimensional and real, and through my daughter's eyes. And then I go on to ask them those questions about prior knowledge, and, if they've taken an online course before and what they learned from that, and what their expectations for the course is. My course is Introduction to Online Teaching, and the main project of the course is to build an online course. And my students are master's level, usually pre-service K-12 teachers. And it's at UAlbany. And what else do I do in there? I also ask them, the other thing I do is I ask them, why do they think that I introduced myself in the way that I did through that video with my daughter? And again, I used VoiceThread to do this. This allows students to do text if they want to. It allows them to do voice if they want to. It allows them to also do video if they want to. So, and I model all of those different ways of interacting in VoiceThread for them. And I don't script any of my interactions. And I make sure that, like I'm in my jammies kind of with messy hair. I really want them to get a sense of me as a person through those interactions. So other examples would be, I wrote a love letter to my students, telling them, in my voice, what I expected from them, and how I wanted, what I need from them, things that I really need them to understand. I also created this Voki. I'm popping these links in there, and I'm hoping that they work. Oh, shoot, I missed the H. Here, let me try and get that back in there. There's the Voki. This last link is the Voki. And I have the link to the VoiceThread somewhere also. And I don't know if you can look, people up in VoiceThread or not, but if you look me up, you can find a whole bunch of the VoiceThreads there where I use my daughter as the intro. So those are just a couple of examples of how I have tried to address this category of indicators that comes under affective expression. Like I said, there's tons of other ways to do this, and I'm sure that the people listening would have their own examples, and I would love to see those examples and to have you guys share those also. I'm always, really interested in how people create that sense of class community and break the ice in their online course. I think it's really important for us all to share our cool ideas with each other and to continue learning, right, about how to do this and how to do this better, how to do this well. All right, so let me move on to the second category, which is about interaction. And the reason that you want interaction, or to support interaction as a component of social presence, is to support that sense of open communication in your online teaching and learning environment. And you want to do that so that students feel comfort conversing in online, and so that they feel comfortable actively participating and engaging in the online interactions and discussions, and so that the students feel comfortable interacting with you as the instructor of the course and with others classmates in the course. It's essential in an online course. The only way that you can make yourself known, your presence felt, is by interacting, by doing something, and usually that means by participating in an interaction and a discussion in your online course. And you can't do that if you don't feel, trust, and if you don't feel comfortable doing that, if you don't feel like it's a safe environment in which you can make your thinking and your learning visible to your instructor and to others in the class. So ways to create interaction in your course, obviously, as part of social presence, obviously, is to start the course with an introductory discussion. And I think I mentioned it already, but to provide models and to provide timely feedback. And then you should also have some explicit expectations about interaction. I have a really thorough discussion grading rubric that I have developed over time. It's really, really specific, and I'm sharing it with you, but I also want to share with you that I'm kind of rethinking how very detailed and how very specific this is. So while you are welcome, everything that I have and everything that I do, I try to do it openly and share it openly. And so if you're interested in adopting or adapting that rubric, please feel free. But I want, the caveat is that I'm kind of thinking about this rubric and how specific it is, and thinking that, I want to lighten it up a little bit. And, I'm kind of going through some changes in my thinking. But in any case, that has been the rubric that I have used for years. Looks like I first posted it in 2009. So I've been using it for a while. And of course, I have updated it and refreshed it over time. Yeah, it is what I use. So another way that you can create interaction in your course and support that interaction, that social presence in your course, is to ask questions. And one of the main ways I do it, and that I advise faculty to do it, is when you're contributing to a discussion in your own course, end each post in your discussion with a question, so that instead of killing the interaction, you're actually kind of setting or cultivating, the ability for students to dig deeper, to go deeper into whatever it is you're talking about. And really that's the key, right? Question assumptions. And this starts getting into teaching presence. It overlaps a little with teaching presence. And as you know, from the community of inquiry, it's a Venn diagram. They overlap, right? And so by asking questions, you're supporting social presence and you're getting into teaching presence and even cognitive presence. But I always end a discussion with a post that I am making with a question, so that the conversation continues and so that you can get the students, like I said, to dig deeper. I don't know if you've had the experience, I certainly have. You risk halting discussions when you contribute as the instructor. The students think that you have the final word. And so by asking some sort of a probing question at the end of your post, you can invite students to continue that thinking, that thread, and to promote additional or create additional depth in the interaction. Other ways that you can promote interaction are things like quoting directly from a previous post in a discussion. You can refer to others by name in a discussion. You can express compliments and appreciation, and never underestimate your power as the instructor of the course. If you have high expectations of your students, it's my experience that your students will rise to them, and with great power comes great responsibility. It's true. You, as the instructor of a course, you have a lot of power, and you need to use that power for good. Another thing you can do to promote interaction is to express some agreement, and again, with the additional sort of emphasis on getting students to dig deeper and to make their thinking and their learning visible to you and to others in the class. Some examples of that would be, one example I can tell you is early on when I first started teaching online, I did not start discussion posts with the name of the person that I was responding to. And it wasn't on purpose. I wasn't purposely trying to, I was being informal, and I guess I thought it was clear because it was a threaded discussion to whom I was referring and to whom I was responding. But I got feedback from one student in particular that really made me think about it. It hit me in the face, kind of. She felt, like it was not polite, kind of, that I wasn't addressing her directly. And so wherever possible now, I use people's names. So I might say, thanks, Pam, for your comment. Did you notice that Joe has a differing opinion, and I'm wondering what you think of Joe's opinion, something like that. And it might not even be opinion. It might be, some citation from the research that supports some notion that Joe had or whatever, and I want her to take a pass at sort of unpacking, based on her understanding, what he has brought into the conversation. So something like that. And I think referring to people explicitly by name helps to build that sense of class community and that sense of social presence, right? I think that, the compliments and the agreement, you have to, you can't go overboard with that. It has to be authentic. You have to be real about it. If you don't think it's a good point that someone makes, you probably shouldn't say that. And just agreeing with somebody also isn't helpful, and that's not something that I model at all. But I might, if I do happen to agree with something, I would say so, but I would always add something to make the students dig deeper into whatever the concept is, or the theory is, or the research is. So those are those are some few examples of interaction. The last area, the category in social presence, is called group cohesion. And the reason you want group cohesion in your online teaching and learning community is to create that sense of class community in your course. You want students to feel comfortable disagreeing with you and with your classmates in the course. And in order to disagree with people, there has to be a sense of trust that requires that students understand what's expected and what's permitted in the class. And it sounds really simple, and it sounds almost like too simple, I guess, but you have to actually explicitly give them permission to disagree with you, and to disagree with each other, and then to also let them know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in your class. And so I have a document that says, very clearly, everybody's thoughts are respected, but you have to support your assertions with research, and you can disagree with me, with each other, but I need to see you support those assertions with reputable scholarly work. It can't be some random newsletter that you found by Googling, which happens a lot. Right, this is a master's level course, and so you also want to make sure that in that sense of class community that you're cultivating, that that people feel that their point of view is acknowledged, and that discussions are used to help students build that sense of collaboration, co-creation, social construction of their understanding of what the course is about, and where they feel like they are positively contributing to the sense making in the course, for themselves and for their classmates. So this is about making their thinking and their learning visible. You can't, there's no learning without failure, without having erroneous thoughts first, and then understanding that, and refining your thinking about something. And in order to do that, you have to express it and have someone give you feedback, or have someone ask questions so that you can refine your understanding and your thinking. And you have to feel safe in order to do that. I think that that's why social presence is so important in a course. Unless you have that sense of trust in that learning community, you're not going to be able to get there. So ways to express group cohesion are, again, providing those expectations for interaction, including etiquette, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the course, providing examples and models to ensure understanding, like I said, giving students permission to disagree and model how to do that, having the instructor model those behaviors is part of it, and then giving some corrective feedback as students are trying it themselves for the first time, to help guide them into how to do that appropriately and well. And then, this kind of overlaps with the last one. Just speak to your students. Use inclusive pronouns. Refer to them by name, greet them, use salutations, all of those kinds of things, I think, helps to form that sense of group cohesion. That inclusive pronoun of we, us, is very helpful in conveying that sense that you are a group, and that you're kind of in this together. Give students lots of opportunities to interact with you and with your content and with each other. In my course, I have an area that I call talk with the professor, or talk with me, I think it is. And it's just a simple discussion with that label. And it really is intended to give students permission, outside the context of some other course discussion, to actually just address something to me. I also have an ask a question area, and I have, a bulletin board. I have lots of places where people can post questions and interact, but I specifically call out a place where they can talk with me. Then another thing that I think is really important is to let students do the work. And a very, very good friend of mine named Bill Pels, who you may know his name, and if you don't, Google him, once told me that if I, as the professor in a course, am doing all of the work, who is doing all of the learning, right? And I know that, especially for professors who are new to online teaching and learning, it's difficult, because we're all experts in our fields, right? Like, I've been doing this for more than 20 years. I am extremely passionate about teaching and learning online, and how it democratizes access to education, and how it is one way to address the issue of poverty in this country and around the world. I'm extremely passionate about it. I don't think it's the solution to everything, but I think it's one of the ways that we can address some real problems that we have today in the world. And I know a lot about it because I've been doing it for a long time, but it's not about my passion. This is not about my passion. It's about catalyzing passion in your students for your topic, for your discipline, for the area of study in your course, and about getting them to interact and get with the content and with the themes or the research or the topics that you are exploring in the course. And so, I can talk about this stuff for hours, but again, what I think and what I know is not what's important. It's about catalyzing that in the students, and so letting them do the work. And really, this is what I'm talking about, is the paradigm shift from teacher-centered instruction to learner-centered instruction. And it's really hard. It's really hard to let students do the work, because we are experts in what we're teaching, and we know the answers, or we know a lot of the answers, and we want to give it to them. We want to help them. And it's just like parenting. You can't learn to walk for your child. You can't learn, to make good choices for your child. They have to do it themselves in order to actually learn. And so being learner-centered is extremely difficult. I struggle with it. Every interaction that I have in my online course, I think to myself before I post, I think, am I, taking away the opportunity for this student to learn something with this post? And how can I reframe this post so that I force them to think about things themselves instead of me giving it to them? So it's really hard, but I mean, that is really one way that I think is really important in this, and that's letting the students do the work. I think another thing that's good is to let the students help each other, and so giving them permission to, if there's if you have a question area in your course, to let and there's questions that students can help each other out on, to make sure that they know that it's okay for them to help each other. And this again bleeds over into teaching presence, because it allows students to express teaching presence in their course. And this is a whole nother talk, but it's not teacher presence, it's teaching presence, which can be expressed both by the instructor and by other members of the learning community. And so giving them permission to help each other and answer each other's questions, and creating other mechanisms for students to express their teaching presence is a good strategy.
I appreciate, I just, one question about the social presence aspect of, you said that you distinguish between the social interaction and then affective elements of social presence, and you're very focused on creating that sense of safety and trust in an online course, which is easy, I think, because I struggle with this sometimes. It's easy to be open in online courses when it's the closed one within an LMS, but being open about your life, and it's something I've always struggled with. Maybe it's a cultural thing. You know, some cultures are more private than others, but how can you be open, or how can you be sure that you're safe when you're being open in social media, like creating those videos and having them on YouTube, but you also want to connect with your students, so you want to be open. How do you do that? Like, what's the I don't know, from your experience as a professional development in the area, do you have these kinds of concerns from your faculty?
Well, yeah, and I also, in my class, many of my students have never blogged before, don't really use Twitter, have never had a YouTube channel. I would say most of them have not. More recently, I've had a few more who have done it, who have used social media for other than, personal purposes, but most of them use it for social purposes. And so one of the objectives in my class is to help them develop their digital identity and the use of social media for more than social purposes, for professional and academic purposes, and to contribute to the dialogue that is happening today in the ethers, the internets, and to be a part of that, to be a contributing part of that, to take control of their personal digital identity, and to begin to craft that for professional and academic purposes. And so, I feel fearless about advocating for this, and about actually talking about it with both my students and with faculty as an obligation. Like, I feel very strongly about this. My daughter is 15 years old, and if I can't teach her how to use social media and the internet properly and appropriately for both social, professional, and academic purposes, who is going to teach her? Now, my hope, the reason I get up in the morning, is because I think I can help to inform and influence the quality of instruction, online instruction in the State University of New York. And part of that is helping faculty to understand that they will be my daughter's future professors, future teachers, future employers. And if they are not helping me to educate her how to be safe online, how to navigate and take control, it's not something to be feared. It's something to take responsibility for, and to be able to understand how you control it. I control my digital identity. I don't friend people that I don't want to friend. I don't put stuff online that I don't want, my boss or my kid to see. I am very, very deliberate about what I do online, and I use it for all three of those purposes: social, professional, and academic. And it is the most powerful, and this is a whole nother talk, but social media is the most powerful professional development tool that I have ever experienced, ever. I don't even know how to say that any more strongly. I have met people that I consider rock stars because of Twitter. And it's not just about what people eat for lunch or what their dog's wearing. You know what I mean? Of course it is that, it is that too, but there's noise and there's signal, and you can control that. It's like a fire hose coming at you, but you can control that. The same with Facebook, the same with any of this stuff. It's just a tool, and you can harness it, and you can use it for specific purposes. And again, like, I feel this is an obligation that we have as educators to understand these technologies, to understand these media, and to use them to help to educate our students, to use them to enhance teaching and learning and engagement, and to leverage the affordances and mitigate the the things that are not so great about them, and to help students develop that understanding and that sense so that they can become positive contributors to academic discourse or the profession that they choose, and even in their own social lives and with their own kids eventually. So, I don't know how to say it any more strongly. I'm freaking fearless when it comes to putting stuff on.
I love that. You are my role model.
I mean, it's not random, right? Like, I don't just it's very, very thoughtful, and I have this discussion with my students, and there are ways to help and guide and teach people how to use technologies and social media in ways to achieve whatever it is that their objectives are and their goals are. And so we need to become guides. The only way to become a guide is if you use it yourself. You can't help someone learn how to use Twitter or how to avoid all the crap in Facebook that there is, unless you've experienced it yourself, right? So things have happened. I have had things happen, and I now know better than I would have if I'd never used it, so that I can help my students, the faculty that I work with, and my daughter be a more productive, be a more conscientious, be a more safe citizen of the internet.
So to follow up on what Maha had asked, I think, what advice would you give to, say, instructional designers or people doing faculty development who might be working with instructors who are not fearless, or say, I'm not their friend, I'm not here to hold their hand, they should be able to figure it out. They need this course, they should be able to just get in there and figure it out. What advice would you give, or how might you work with an instructor like that?
So I totally agree with that. I mean, I don't think we're talking about, like I said earlier, this is not about being chummy with your students. This is not about holding their hands. In fact, I don't teach my students how to use VoiceThread. I don't teach them how to blog. I don't teach them how to go get a blog account. I have them all do edublogs. These things, if you can type your email address and select a password, it's that simple. And if that's hard for you, there are boatloads of videos for every tool that's out there. You can Google, or go to the main site of whatever the tool is, and they will have, facts, and they will have videos, and they will have instructions. So I do not provide my students with instructions that I've created for the tools that I use. But I do, I do understand what you're saying. And so I would never advocate for an instructor to do anything that does not feel authentic to themselves. So if you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, disclosing, stuff about yourself, then don't do that. You may have very good reasons for not to do that. And I know that there are students and faculty who would prefer to use an avatar, for example, rather than an image of themselves. And there are very, very good reasons for doing that. I have tons of examples of that. So I don't want the message to be lost in the mix there. The message is, how do you create a sense of connection and a sense of social presence with your students? And one way to do that is by having some sort of an image. So it doesn't have to be your face. It could be, a flower or a dog that still conveys, or could convey, an aspect of your personality that is a self-disclosure. If you do a picture of a dog, presumably it is because you like dogs, or maybe it's even your own dog, right? So you have to find a way to achieve these things in a way that's authentic to yourself, right? And so, the other question you asked, Patrice, was about, faculty who may not be fearless. And I agree, any path, any journey takes place one step at a time. And so you I challenge faculty. I challenge their thinking. I ask them to consider the possibility that there might be another way other than how they currently think. And I ask them to allow for that possibility, and I show them examples of my own and of other people who, for whatever point I'm trying to make, and then I sort of lay the table. I give them some options on how to think about enhancing their instruction online with some technologies or with some concepts, let's say social presence, that might be facilitated by a technology. And I show them different things and ask them to consider if any of those resonates with them in some way. And if it helps them to solve a particular problem that they right, like when you're choosing to change, when you have to choose to change, you don't just change, and that choice is motivated by a need. There has to be some sort of a need that motivates a change. And so, if they're trying to achieve something, I want them to consider whether or not achieving it might be better served with the use of some sort of a technology. And it might mean that they need to take the risk in order to do that, but then the need outweighs the fear of the risk. You see what I'm saying? So I always talk about, what is it that you're trying to do, or what is it that you have not been able to do? And let's see if there is something that could assist you in achieving that in a way. I always use the words better, faster, safer, easier, or cheaper. Those are things that might motivate someone to change something. And if you can make their workload easier, if you can make the activity safer, if you can make whatever it is cheaper, whatever, better, faster, safer, easier, cheaper, any one of those, then there's some motivation to do whatever it is to get to that, right? Then it becomes not about that, it becomes about the objective, which you have to go through that risk in order to get to that objective, and then it becomes the cost benefit works out in favor of taking the risk, right? So, and then, like I said, you don't toss all of this onto them all at once. It's not like in my course, I use about 15 technologies, and I have, these are master's level students anyways. And I'm not advocating that everybody do this. I have specific reasons for why I do what I do, and they are contextually appropriate and authentic to me. They might not be for you. And so I'm not saying people should do exactly what I do, but I have examples of things that I do, and I have examples of things that other people do that I think could help people see possibilities and see how those possibilities might help them in some way, so that they feel that the risk is worth it.
Yeah, I think an important point is, like you said, is then you have to weigh the benefit and the risk, and just being reflective about the tools that you use. It's an ongoing process. It's not just a hit and miss. You try it, you reflect on it, and there are a lot of tools that I had before, and I stopped my Facebook account, I stopped my Instagram account. They weren't serving me anymore, so I just stopped them. I don't have to keep them, right? So I deleted it. Twitter, I love Twitter. I still have it, and so, like you said, maybe taking the risk, experimenting, and then being reflective about it is a good way to think about it. Being very thoughtful. It's a process. Yep. It's not I'm going to use it or not, but a process.
I started using all kinds of these technologies initially for professional purposes, which is backwards. Like when I first started in Facebook and Twitter, it was all about exploring it for instructional purposes, and it was not social at all. And then over time, my cousins from Colombia found me in Facebook, and I had to pause because it was weird. I'm like, I don't know about this. Should I have two different
Yeah,
Facebooks, and how do I feel about mingling my personal self with my professional self, and I had to reflect, and I blogged about it actually years ago, and I had to reflect a long time before I actually posted that blog post, but I came to the conclusion for myself personally, and I know people make different decisions for different reasons, but for myself personally, I didn't want to separate. First of all, I didn't have time. And second of all, I felt like that was not authentic, that I am not just what I do. I'm also Issa's mom. I'm also an artist. I'm also a wife. I also, like to do crafts, and I also know a little bit about online teaching and learning, and that is the whole me, plus all sorts of other stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started to let that blend happen, and I started to sort of just feel that and observe how that felt and how that was happening, and I let that happen purposely. Because I wanted to represent myself authentically as a multidimensional human being, both to myself, to my daughter, and to my students, and to my professional circle. And what I noticed was, I still filter. Like, I don't say every random thing that comes into my head, and believe me, sometimes I wish I could, but I don't, because I know that, Larry Johnson from NMC I follow, Brian Alexander, George Siemens, all these people I know, right? And while I am interested in some aspects of them personally, because it makes them feel more real and more authentic to me, to know that, it's snowing at Brian's house and he's chopping wood and his cats are sleepy, like that's a little bit of noise, but he's got a lot of signal, right? And that part, that's the noise, the personal part about it, makes me feel close to him and makes me feel like I know him, like I actually know him, and I actually do know him now, but it makes me sort of feel his authentic self. And so I feel the same thing about myself. Like, I don't post any random thought I have, but I do mix my personal and my professional and academic selves, and I do that judiciously, and I filter, and it's a process, right?
I agree. I'm actually rethinking about like my Facebook account. So I'm thinking about it again. The way I started it was social. So I was the opposite. And then it reached a point where it was just like nothing, like just pictures of babies and like, I don't know, like it was just adding nothing to my life. So I stopped it. But now I feel like I'm missing on some opportunities professionally. Yeah. And so now I'm starting to think, well, do I take back my old account, or do I create a new one? And so I'm actually thinking it's my process now. So, yeah, it's my process.
I'll find that blog post that I have and I'll share it with you. Maybe that'll help you. I don't know.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you.
I was thinking, as we were talking about working with, instructors and faculty, that a lot of what we were talking about with respect to developing community in the course, that everything starts with developing relationships of trust. I think it's the same when working with faculty, that it's so important to just, a lot of the things you said, Alex, just take the time to ask them questions, get to know them, get to know what's important to them, what challenges they're having, so that you can help them think about how they're incorporating these things into their course without kind of just throwing it. And also just, making sure that they have a safe space to fail. Because I think that's a fear, is, well, what if I try this new thing and it doesn't work? How am I going to look to my students? How is it going to impact their learning experience? So kind of building that in also is just, that sense of trust and making sure that they feel safe as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, it's been.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was going to say, we're just about at an hour, so I don't know if you had any last thoughts that you wanted to leave the class with, kind of. Well,
I think that this conversation is really good to have, and I think that, you know, it would be cool to hear what others think about this topic, and to have people share their own examples, and to look at social presence and the 3 categories of indicators, and to see examples, if people could share examples in each of the areas, and then, you know, just in general to know, I mean, people are in this course presumably because they have an interest in online teaching and learning, and an interest in the community of inquiry model, an interest in using technology to enhance engagement and enhance instruction in the online teaching and learning environment, and using the community of inquiry framework as a framework for understanding how to cultivate you know, an effective, engaging online teaching and learning environment is a really good framework. I think it helps to really understand by using this framework these different elements, and how they are essential to creating an effective environment in which people can teach and learn well. And so, you know, social presence to me is extremely an extremely important aspect of the framework, equally important to the other 2. Without it, I don't think, like I said at the beginning, I don't think you can get to teaching presence or to cognitive presence. You have to have that sense of class community and that sense of trust. And so exploring that and experimenting with ways of achieving these different elements of social presence, I think, is really important work. And I'd be really interested in seeing and hearing about how other people are doing it as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to chat about this. It's, you know, like I said, something I'm pretty passionate about, and I really have enjoyed sort of, you know, looking in at the human MOOC and seeing what's going on in there. It's good.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great. Yeah, a lot of information. I could write a book. I'm gonna write a book and put my name on it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Alex.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.